This is CNN.
Louisiana voters cast ballots in what appears to be a very close three-way race for governor.
And Oliver North says his old boss, Ronald Reagan, knew everything about the Iran-contra affair. Welcome to this weekend edition of Early Prime. I'm Jonathan Mann at the CNN Center in Atlanta.
I'm Deborah Potter in Washington, in for David French. There has been a development this afternoon that could have an impact on efforts to free Western hostages in Lebanon. Israel says it has determined that one of its servicemen listed as missing in action in Lebanon is dead. For details, CNN's Linda Scherzer is on the phone with us from Jerusalem. Linda?
Deborah, the Israelis have just received word that Joseph Fink, one of two soldiers who was ambushed in South Lebanon in 1986, missing for the past 5 years, is confirmed dead. Now, that brings to 3 the number of Israeli soldiers who have been accounted for. Just last month, Israel learned that Rahamim al-Sheikh, a soldier who was with Fink in South Lebanon on patrol when their car was ambushed, is also confirmed dead. And the body of another soldier was repatriated to Israel last month, leaving 4 Israeli soldiers still unaccounted for. Now, the information that has just been confirmed about Fink could be an important development in bringing about more hostage prisoner releases. The Israelis have said they are prepared to release some of their Lebanese and Shiite prisoners, but only in exchange for solid, irrefutable proof of the fate of their MIAs and POWs. Just last month, you will recall that Israel did free some 51 Lebanese prisoners. They also returned the bodies of 9 Shiite guerrillas when they received information about the fate of Rahamim al-Sheikh. There are some 350 Lebanese prisoners being held in Israel and also in South Lebanon. They are believed to be the keys to the release of more Western hostages, and we are waiting now to see what Israel's next move will be. This is Linda Scherzer, CNN, reporting live from Jerusalem.
The wife of hostage Jesse Turner says she is very eager to see her husband. His pro-Iranian captors say they will allow Bader Turner and the couple's daughter to see him for 1 hour. Turner was kidnapped in January 1987 with fellow American Alan Steen. He has never seen his daughter. The offer is seen as a means of keeping pressure on Israel to release more Muslim prisoners. Secretary of State James Baker is in Madrid to work out details with Spanish officials for this month's planned Middle East Peace Conference. While the conference is set to begin October 30th, Baker says he's not taking anything for granted. The U.S. and the Soviet Union will co-sponsor the peace talks. The Israeli cabinet is expected to decide tomorrow whether to attend. Jordan and the Palestinians announced today they do plan to attend.
The polls close in Louisiana in 4 hours from now, and sometime this evening we should have the first results of a tight governor's race that's boiled down to 3 main candidates: the incumbent governor, a former governor, and a former grand wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. CNN's Charles Zewe is covering the race. He joins us now on the line from Baton Rouge with the latest. Charles?
Jonathan, Louisiana voters are picking a governor today in the wind-up of another one of the state's usually spicy races. The incumbent, Buddy Roemer, is battling for his political life in the face of strong challenges from former Governor Edwin Edwards and State Representative David Duke, the former Klansman and neo-Nazi sympathizer. Because of his past, and primarily because of that, Duke has made a strong showing, and he is the person who's getting most of the interest in this governor's race. Voter turnout across the state was moderate to heavy today under nearly perfect weather conditions. While there are 12 candidates running for governor, only Roemer, Edwards, and Duke are given a chance of making a runoff. All 3 of those candidates spent most of the day today trying to get out their vote.
The Duke people, I think, are all going to vote by 6:30 a.m. They're going to vote. You know, they're motivated, and I think that's one thing. Duke is good at motivating his followers.
Both Edwards and Duke are predicting they'll run first in the election returns tonight. Roemer is conceding he'll be happy just to make a runoff. In fact, he is saying he may get squeezed out of a runoff spot. If turnout predictions hold up, about 75% of Louisiana voters will go to the polls. No one is expected to get a majority, meaning there'll have to be a runoff on November 16th. Charles Zewe, CNN, New Orleans.
In almost 200 communities around the U.S., rallies were held today as part of the second annual Taxpayers Action Day.
The legislature in America.
Washington is dominated
what do you do?
by lobbyists
About 1,000 angry taxpayers turned out in Pontiac, Michigan to express their unhappiness with Congress and the federal government over the tax system. A much smaller crowd turned out in Hackensack, New Jersey for the beginning of what organizers there are calling a tax showdown to Election Day. Today's demonstrations in 47 states were organized by Citizens Against Government Waste. In just a few moments, the president of that group will join us, along with a tax expert. Meantime, some of the 74 anti-abortion protesters arrested outside a clinic in Cincinnati Friday were back for more today. Police report another 24 arrests. Some of the protesters jumped over a fence and blocked access to the clinic. Abortion rights activists also joined the fray, but left after police warnings. Planned Parenthood said the clinic continued to function during the protests.
Oliver North is questioning Ronald Reagan's memory. The former president has always denied knowing the basics of the Iran-contra scandal, that Nicaraguan rebels were supplied with money the U.S. made by selling weapons to Iran. But in his upcoming book, which is excerpted in Time magazine, North writes that Mr. Reagan knew of and approved a great deal of what went on with both the Iranian initiative and private efforts on behalf of the Contras, and he received regular, detailed briefings on both. But North also admits presidential aides might have shielded Mr. Reagan. The money diversion violated a congressional ban on aid to the Contras.
The man who gunned down 22 people in a Texas cafeteria may have watched a movie depicting a similar massacre. The Dallas Morning News says police found a ticket to the movie The Fisher King in the belongings of the killer, George Hennard. The movie character eventually shoots himself, as Hennard did. Meanwhile, bereaved citizens of Killeen, Texas, attended a memorial service yesterday for slain friends, relatives, and neighbors. Today, the first funerals are being held for the victims, and churches across the city are keeping their doors open for prayer vigils and counseling. A 5-month-old baby remains in critical condition at a New York hospital after eating tainted baby food. The infant went into convulsions Wednesday after she was fed beechnut Chiquita bananas, stage 1. Federal and city chemists are trying to identify the contaminating substance. Officials say they found evidence of tampering with other jars at the same store, but not at any other stores. Beechnut has set up a phone line for consumer questions. You can see it there, that number, 800-545-7022. Anyone with information about the tampering is asked to call the Food and Drug Administration at the number 718-965-5725.
When we return to Early Prime, taxes. Everybody loves to hate them. We'll hear two experts debate whether fewer of the unloved levies would help solve some of our economic problems. Also, a place in North Carolina that taps retirees as a resource, and the latest on how Pacific Northwesterners are battling deadly wildfires.
Watch carefully. What you are about to see is fast, very fast. When the Pennzoil Special is racing at 230 miles per hour at Indy, its engine needs all the protection it can get. And that's what it gets with Pennzoil. The same straight-off-the-shelf Pennzoil quality that goes in your car. On the road or on the racetrack, nothing performs like Pennzoil, because nothing protects like Pennzoil.
Pennzoil, ever since America learned to drive.
At GMC Truck, our only business is trucks, and has been for over 80 years. A dedication to truck strengths and values to keep in mind, because when you need to haul something, tow something, carry precious cargo, find new trails, or simply ride high and proud, there's nothing quite as strong as a truck. GMC Truck, the strength of experience.
How does your Genie screwdriver door opener work?
It just kind of whirls. It goes...
I push the button on the garage and the door opens just like that.
It's kind of like a long screw that just kind of steadily draws the door up on an even pace. As opposed to a chain, and if you've ever seen a chain on a bicycle, you'll know that it jerk, 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 The thing I don't like about bicycle chains is bicycle chains have links in them, and links tend to come undone.
Genie screwdriver, built for a lifetime.
This is a typical Saturday at the Miller house.
No nic jiného by nám nezbývalo, než že bychom museli, protože jsme přísahali, takže nic ničeho by nám nezbylo. Bránili bychom ho za každou cenu.
Na, das Schlimmste irgendwie, dass sie wieder den Ostblock irgendwie abteilen oder irgendwie sowas. Also ich habe noch nicht direkt darüber nachgedacht, was so passieren könnte. Ich habe einfach nur ein bisschen Angst.
Heal the hopes and fears from those who live in the new USSR on a CNN Sunday night special this Sunday, 9 Eastern.
World economics, a complex, ever-changing machine. What happens within its delicate framework affects every minute of your life. Whether your concerns are on Main Street or with Wall Street, you need information to manage them intelligently. Every day, CNN gives you a thorough look at changes in the economics machine, viewing details in ways you can understand. Business news to keep you in time with change on CNN.
Just a few minutes ago, we told you about the taxpayer action rallies held around the country today. They were organized by Citizens Against Government Waste, and the president of that group, Dr. Alan Keyes, joins us now. Also joining us is Eugene Steuerle, a former U.S. Treasury Deputy Assistant Secretary, now a senior fellow at the Urban Institute, specializing in tax and budget issues. Thank you both for joining us today, gentlemen. And I guess I'd start with you, Alan Keyes, since your group sponsored today's rallies. What kind of action are you really calling for, and what are you aiming at? There is a perception, obviously, the tax system is unfair. Do you think it is, and what should be changed?
Well, I think what we were aiming to highlight was the fact that politicians tend to look at tax increases as the solution to deficit problems, though they've never solved them. We think the real solution is for greater government efficiency, eliminate the $200 billion in government waste the Comptroller General says exists at the federal level, look for ways to make state and local governments more efficient, rather than increasing the burden on the taxpayer and the economy through higher taxes that haven't really solved the deficit problem.
But wouldn't you like to see taxes lowered as well? I mean, aren't you talking about some kind of reforms in the tax system as it now stands?
Well, I do think the tax system needs to be made fairer. It needs to be a tax system in which folks who can afford lawyers and accountants aren't given greater advantages over the rest of us. But most importantly, I think we just need to see more respect for the taxpayer's dollar in the way that government uses those resources so they don't have to keep digging into the taxpayer's pockets.
Well, let me ask you about some of the things that are now being discussed and have been for some time, and one of which is the capital gains tax and whether that should be cut. Do you think it should, and would it have much of an effect on the economy?
Well, I think it would have a positive impact on the economy. It would add to the resources that are available for job-creating investments. But I also think it should be done in the context of looking for some way of providing tax relief to all citizens, not just to those who make these kinds of investments. Mr. Bush's stand before he retreated from his no new tax pledge was, I think, more consistent in some ways. Cross the board, protect the taxpayer, and in addition to that, let's have some economy-stimulating cuts in the capital gains tax.
That almost sounded like a concession that a capital gains tax cut would really benefit the rich more than anyone else. Do you think so, Gene Steuerle? Who benefits from a capital gains tax cut?
Well, there are three groups that mainly benefit, two of which we might have some sympathy for, and one of whom we might not. The first two are those who already pay a substantial tax and really do not deserve to be taxed twice. One of whom might be considered those who pay a corporate tax and then are taxed again on those corporate earnings when they realize gains. A second group pays a large capital gains tax when inflation basically increases the value of capital, but there's no real income. But there is a third group, and this third group are individuals who have substantial amounts of wealth and often pay very little tax on that wealth at all. This group would also benefit from a capital gains tax cut, and it's not so clear to me that this group is one that's deserving of our sympathy.
And they're probably not out there rallying either. Let me ask you whether you think that a capital gains tax cut would in fact benefit the economy as a whole. Is it one of the sort of kicks in the pants that's needed to get things going again?
I think capital gains tax cut right now is basically one of those sops that's being offered by politicians. It's really a very small item relative to some of the very basic needs of our society. For about 10, 20 years now, we've been spending about $5 and collecting about $4. And what politicians want to keep telling us is, well, we can keep spending that $5 and keep collecting only $4, or let's spend some more and let's raise even less. In fact, these budget deficits that we've been generating over the years have led to a substantial number of the problems we have today.
Alan Keyes, I see you sort of shaking your head.
Well,
Probably not true.
Because I think that the capital gains tax cut is really aimed at stimulating the kind of investment that leads to job creation. If you have rich people, what you want to do is stimulate them to use those resources in ways that will help to provide jobs for the rest of the people in the country. And a cut in the capital gains tax will provide that kind of stimulus, help to pull this country out of the recession. He's right, though. It's not the only answer. You've got to do something about the pattern of wasteful government spending to cut back on the government's appetite for our resources so that we can keep better pace both with the needs of our people and with the needs of our economy, because the weight of the government's burden on that economy is discouraging the expansion of horizons of opportunity for our people.
There's also a discouragement among some people at what's happened to the individual retirement account. I mean, it used to be a way you could save if you weren't covered by a lot of other things. Now that's become more difficult. Do you think that there's a legitimate move on now to reopen that whole issue of IRAs?
Well, I think that there is, and I think that it's a good idea. I think we ought to be encouraging people to believe that savings are a good thing, which they do in their own interest, and which then increase once again the stock of capital that's going to be available for useful investments, job-creating investments in the economy. It's the kind of thing that can help to increase that investment-oriented mentality as opposed to a mentality of consumption, particularly by the government, which doesn't produce the same kind of productive stimulus for the economy.
Gene Steuerle, is any of this likely to lead to a really serious fight on Capitol Hill this fall, or are we just sort of, as you said, throwing out sops at the moment, not dealing with the real issues, and is it likely to be something that's going to come to a head or be put off until maybe the election year, after the election year?
I think actually the smaller the amount that we might spend on these items, the more likely there's likely to be a major battle. As I say, we have a budget which involves expenditures and taxes of roughly $1 trillion now. So if we can talk about spending, 1/10 of 1% or moving around some tiny, tiny portion of that budget, that's a nice debate that we can have, but really doesn't get it all at our central problems.
Alan Keyes, is there any give from your point of view among the Democrats on any of these issues, or are we talking about the immovable force and the irresistible object?
Well, I hope not. I think that there are folks on the Democratic side who have started to see the wisdom of providing tax relief for middle-income people and working people in America. I think that's a good idea. But they should also get out of this short-sighted mentality that you can somehow stimulate the economy by penalizing those who have the wealth that's needed to be invested in that economy for job creation. A cut in the capital gains tax will stimulate them to use those resources in ways that benefit all of us. And I think that those who are on the Democratic side ought to be working to make that happen. We need job creation, not just extended unemployment benefits.
Well, gentlemen, thank you for coming in and at least getting the debate started. Thank you both for joining us, Dr. Alan Keyes of Citizens Against Government Waste and Eugene Steuerle of the Urban Institute.
And tomorrow on Early Prime, an unusual angle on the upcoming Mideast Peace Conference through the eyes of a once imprisoned Soviet dissident. Our guest will be Natan Sharansky, who spent years trying to flee the Soviet Union and now lives in Israel. Straight ahead, though, on today's Early Prime, you'll see how young and old are learning from one another and how an entire community can benefit.
I'm trying to call overseas with this other long-distance company. I think I remember the number, but I guess not. I call the operator, but she says she can't give me an international number. I say AT&T always could. She says, you're not dealing with AT&T.
If you miss dealing with AT&T, it's easier than ever to come back. Just call 1-800-972-0404 right now and we'll switch you back for free.
They kept saying how much money I'd save, so I kept waiting for that first low bill. Then I get it. I'm not kidding. I thought it was a typo. I mean, where were the big savings?
People who thought they could do better than AT&T are coming back for the real value, like the Reach Out America plan where you can save 24 hours a day. Come back now for free. Call 1-800-972-0404.
Takes longer to get through. They aren't saving me what they said, so why am I doing this? But I thought, you know what? It's going to be a real pain to switch back.
Coming back to AT&T is easy. All you have to do is call us. We'll have you back with dependable AT&T long-distance service in no time. And if you call right now, we'll even switch you for free.
The last straw? When it took so long to reach a real person. I had, some problems, some questions about my bill, but I kept having to wait. I mean, who has time for this?
You can count on AT&T to be there whenever you call. Just like you can count on us to make every conversation sound as clear as being right there. Don't wait to get back the service you deserve. Call now.
You gotta read the fine print.
Where's the big savings?
You gotta follow their rules. I couldn't believe it.
Why am I doing this?
I don't get it.
They gotta be kidding. Big savings, huh?
You're not dealing with AT&T.
Oh, I am now.
1-800-972-0404 for dependable, crystal clear AT&T long-distance service. It's easy. And if you call right now, we'll switch you for free. You couldn't pick a better time to come back.
Nearly 20% of the population of Asheville, North Carolina is retired, and the Asheville community is discovering that its older citizens are a valuable resource, a wealth of experience waiting to be tapped. CNN's Cheryl Potts explains.
What happens to the structure and the way it's set up between this and heating it to get this?
Real good question.
Retired physicist James Parker is beginning a new life in research at the University of North Carolina, Asheville. His partner, Paige McKenzie, is a student.
She